If nobody cares, I do. By BiWicked666, read by Jellybeano. Summary. Being quirkless had made Izuku numb to all the bullshit that could happen to him. Or so he thought. 3 days before his 8th birthday, someone broke into his home. They said that his mom hadn't been paying rent for a while now, and she was nowhere to be found, so he would have to leave. He was in the middle of a good crying session when suddenly there was a boy with spiky blonde hair and piercing red eyes asking him, "What the fuck are you doing crying in the middle of a park?" Katsuki was trying to mind his own business when he heard someone sobbing in a park. For someone who wanted to be a hero, it wasn't an option to just leave someone who looked so lost and broken. Aizawa was so sick of this bullshit. There had been sightings of, apparently, 2 teenagers who had too much time on their hands. The police would get anonymous tips about different crimes, but by the time they got there, villains had already been tied up and there was only a small note saying XOXO. He had only been a hero for a few years, but maybe he should consider retirement. If nothing else, that would definitely give him less gray hairs. Notes. Hi, this is my first time ever writing a fanfiction, or anything, so please be patient with me. Also, English isn't my first language, so please correct me if there are any mistakes. I've always loved Dadzawa fics and Bakudeka fics, so I decided to try writing one myself. I intended this to be a longer series, but we'll see what my ADHD will say about that. Let me know what you think about in the comments. Chapter 1. Are you lost? If you know where you are? Chapter 1. Izuku. Before, everything was great. He had a family that loved him, roof over his head, and food on the table that made sure he didn't have to go to bed hungry. He had a mom who loved him and his own room. Life wasn't always great, but hey, it could be worse. Every kid was supposed to have their quirk by their 6th birthday, but he didn't, because he was quirkless. Really rare nowadays, but apparently not impossible. And it robbed anything good out of his life. His mother started to avoid him like the plague. It was fine at first. He was used to making meals for himself since his father had left them when he was a child and his mother worked 2 jobs to provide. But after the diagnosis, she changed. First week, she cried. He tried everything that he could to make her happy. He did his homework, cleaned his room, and made food for them both. But nothing seemed to help. Soon after, he started seeing her less and less. 3 days before his 8th birthday, someone broke into their home. They said that his mom was not paying rent and was not anywhere to be found, so he would have to leave. Huh? Just like that? Where am I supposed to go? He thought. He had no one. At least the men allowed him to pick up any stuff he wanted from his room, which isn't that much since he had to sell most of his stuff when his mother left him to fend his own. Not that he knew what he would do about any unnecessary stuff anyway. It's not like homeless people could have much. He had a small backpack filled with a few comic books, notebooks, and pens, a blanket and a duffel bag stuffed with clothes. Last, he picked up an all-night stuffy and a picture of him and his mom. She might not care about him, but he still loved her. She was still his mom. He took one last look at the place that he used to call home and then quietly closed the door. He wandered around, not really knowing what to do. Homeless shelters wouldn't take him because of his age and quirkless people wouldn't be allowed to be there anyway. And besides, that is sure way to get into the foster system. He had heard enough stories about systems to know that would be one way to get killed or worse. But it was almost winter, and he had nothing. He felt how tears were beginning to spill. He was really alone now. He sat on a swing and kicked the sand. Quiet sobbed, Rex, over his body. I'm sorry, Mom. I tried to be good. I'm sorry I wasn't a good son. I'm so sorry. He was slowly rocking his body in effort to try to calm himself. He was so inside his head that he didn't hear footsteps getting closer. Why are you crying? Izuku's head snapped up. There was a boy a few feet away from him. He was about the same age as him, leaning over the slide. He had ash blonde hair up in spikes. It reminded him of explosions and red piercing eyes that stared directly in his green ones. What? Izuku tried to speak. Are you deaf or something? The boy huffed, clearly irritated to having to repeat himself. I asked, what the fuck? I asked, why the fuck are you crying alone in a park? Izuku opened his mouth to answer, but the words just wouldn't come out. He hates when this happens. He had always had anxiety, and he literally could not speak. His doctor had told his mom it would be good for them to learn sign language to help with his nonverbal episodes. But his mom threw that idea right out the window. She said it would have been a waste of her fucking time. According to her, she already had enough of that by giving birth for such a useless son. He turned to look at his feet and started kicking the sand again while letting out a small hiccup. You can't speak, huh? The blond boy said and sat at the swing next to him. Can you write, though? The boy asked him and offered a small stick. Izuku stared at the boy. He really didn't want to talk to strangers, but by the looks of it, the boy wasn't going to leave him alone anytime soon. So, Izuku took a big breath and decided to grab the stick while giving a small nod. What's your name? The boy asked. Izuku. Izuku. My name is Katsuki, if you're interested, the blonde told him. Well, not really, but he wasn't going to offend the boy who had been nothing but nice to him. So, now, are you going to tell me why you're crying? Katsuki asked. Izuku shrugged. He didn't feel that he owed this boy anything. I was kicked out of my home. Oh, that sucks. What about your mom and dad? Are they going to pick you up from here? Katsuki asked. I have no one. Izuku didn't dare to look at the boy. He didn't want any pity from him. Poor, quirkless Deku. That's what people always said when they thought that he couldn't hear. But he did. They knew that even if he did hear them, there was nothing he could do about it. I don't have anyone either. My mom kicked me out after my quirk exploded the kitchen far too many times. Or at least that's what the hag said anyway. She said that I was an ungrateful bastard and that she wished that she wouldn't have never given birth to me. That I robbed her good years she could have used to make even bigger name for herself, Katsuki told him. He looked angry, as he should be. Izuku might be young, but he knew that no one should be treated that way, especially by their own parents. They sat in silence as the darkness fell around them. Suddenly, there was a loud growl. Izuku could feel his face getting flushed. All the things that has happened to him made him beyond exhausted and apparently really hungry. Like he didn't have enough problems before. Come on. Katsuki hopped up and offered his hand. Izuku stared at the hand, not really knowing what the boy was getting at. I'm not gonna rob you or anything. You just said that you have nowhere to go, and by the sound of either your stomach or there is some kind of fucking whale in the slide, you're hungry. I'm gonna help you this once because I want to be a hero someday, and heroes don't leave anyone by themselves when they clearly are in need of saving. So, stop staring at me like some useless fucker and come on. By the time Katsuki was finished with his speech, Izuku had decided that he was out of options, and it's not like he could stay here. He grabbed the blonde's offered hand while grabbing his duffel bag from the ground. Katsuki had led him to the small store nearby where he bought 2 melon breads and waters. Then they continued their journey. Sometimes, Katsuki would stop by an alley or building and tell Izuku different reasons to avoid the places. Izuku looked skeptic, but so far the boy has not lied to him, so he decided to go with it, for now. Soon, they arrived at the beach, full of trash. Izuku said while still holding the other boy's hand. Come on, we're not that far, Katsuki said, and led him through paths between the trash piles. Wind blew and made sudden sound of something metallic hitting against a broken glass. The sound was so loud and sudden that it made Izuku jump and tighten his grip on Katsuki's hand. Somehow, even if Izuku didn't fully trust the boy, he felt safe. Weird. What seemed to be the highest trash tower, maybe, is what made them stop. Katsuki let go of his hand, and that made Izuku whine unintentionally. Don't worry, I'm not leaving you. Or maybe if you cannot climb. After saying that, Katsuki started to climb up on the pile. He looked like he had done it thousands of times before, like he was not afraid of holding on to the wrong things and falling over. Halfway over to the top, he stopped and glanced down at Izuku. Are you coming or not? Izuku nodded slowly. He could do this. He sure as fuck could fall, but really, what was there for him to lose? His dignity? There was not anything left out of that anyway. Slowly, he started to climb up. Sure, there were a few times he thought he would fall, but somehow he still didn't. He was panting hard and trying to balance the duffel bag in his hands. Then he felt someone grab him by the elbow. Katsuki yanked him up, and what he now realizes is a car. Broken, for sure, but the windows were intact, and there was just enough space for the both of them. Welcome to my home. It's not much, but it beats sleeping in a trash can in some shady alley, Katsuki said and spread his arms. There were black backpacks in a back corner and a few empty water bottles on the floor. He saw a sleeping bag in the corner and Izuku squeaks. There were a few All Might comic books, neatly stacked covered up in see-through plastic. Katsuki follows his eyes to see what made him scream. You like All Might? Katsuki asks while reaching over to grab one of the comic books off the pile. Izuku nods enthusiastically. You can read them if you want to. If you can see in here, I mean. But be careful not to rip them. I don't have the money to buy new ones anymore. Izuku nods and Katsuki shuffles to grab what Izuku realized to be a small lantern. He was eager to see what comic books Katsuki has. After finding one he likes, he starts to carefully flick over the pages. But a sudden thought entered his mind. He comes to a stop and reaches over to search something from his own bag. After finding what he was looking for, he hands over a few comic books that he managed to stuff in his bag before getting kicked out. Wow, you have this one from the Bronze Age? That's so cool! Katsuki looks at him in awe. Izuku hands him a small note. You can read it if you like. Thanks. I've not read the new ones. They cost too much, and let's face it, who would be dumb enough to throw away comic books? Katsuki says, already flipping through the pages. Comfortable silence falls over. Then, Izuku's stomach decides to give another dying wail sound that makes Izuku blush and Katsuki crack up. Sorry, I completely forgot about that. Here. Katsuki hands him over one of the sandwiches and one water bottle. Izuku takes both, slightly hesitating, but Katsuki is already stuffing his face with his own, so he decides to follow his lead. While eating, Katsuki apparently notices Izuku rubbing his hands together in an effort to warm them up. It was getting cold, and he knew that he mostly had summer clothes, since he outgrew his old winter clothes a while ago. Not that anyone would have been there to notice. He hadn't seen his mom for almost a whole year. Despite his best efforts, a small yawn breaks out of him. Katsuki notices and starts to put things back in their places. Tired? Katsuki asks. Izuku nods and rubs his eyes. Do you have anything warm to sleep in? the blonde asks while pointing at Izuku's bags. Izuku nods again and pulls out a blanket. Katsuki looks at it hesitantly. I don't think that's gonna cut it. Look, if we put that under, I might be able to share my sleeping bag, but just for tonight. Tomorrow, we're gonna start to look for one for. We're going to start to look one for you. Otherwise, you're gonna freeze over the winter. Understood? Izuku looks at him wide, but nods anyway. Also, put those on. They're my spare pair, so you can borrow them until we find one pair for you. Izuku looks at the pair of warm gloves that the boy threw at him. Nobody has been this nice to him since he got his quirkless status, and even before that, it was a long stretch. He feels like he might cry, but quickly pulls himself together after looking over and seeing the blonde boy looking uncomfortable. After moving things around, they finally make sure the doors are locked tight and crawl in bed. It was a really tight fit, even, but neither of them complained. Izuku stares at the ceiling and goes over the whole day in his head. The faint sound of waves crashing in the shore might have helped him relax before, but did nothing now. Izuku finally starts to feel everything that has happened today. He had no home anymore. Sure, Katsuki had helped him today, but he would grow tired of him like anyone else in his life has before. It's not like he could count on Katsuki to take care of him. He probably has his own problems and doesn't need a useless person in his life to drag him down. At some point, he started to cry without even realizing it. Only when he hears Katsuki turn around facing him and putting his hand on Izuku's face, he realized that he is hyperventilating. Hey, none of that! Hey, look at me, Freckles, Katsuki orders and slowly turns Izuku's face to look at his own. I'm here. You're not alone. Come on now. Match my breath. In and out. Katsuki takes Izuku's hand and puts it on his chest. That's it. One more time. Izuku can feel his breathing start to relax, but the tears won't stop falling. Katsuki lets his hand out of Izuku's. Katsuki lets out his hand, but Izuku tightens his hold of Katsuki's jacket, unsure why he wiggles his body near the other boy and hugs Katsuki. He can feel the blonde's whole body going rigid, but slowly, there's hesitating hands around him, hugging him back just as tight. I'm here, Katsuki mumbles in his hair, and he can feel himself starting to drift away. Just before he falls asleep, he mumbles, Thanks, Katsuki. Alright, that is all of Chapter 1. I really liked how this fic is turning out because it's a Vigilante Izuku fic, and it also has Bakudeku. Disclaimer, it does have Bakudeku. But usually most Vigilante Izuku fics you find have a rivalry between Izuku and Bakugo, or they just have a really bad past. Personally, I've always liked Bakudeku, so it's kind of nice to find a fic with both Vigilante Izuku and Bakudeku. But if you liked this fic so far, please go and give the writer kudos and check out their thing. The writer is BiWicked666, capital B-I, capital W-I-C-K-E-D 666. BiWicked666. This is my first podfic, so I haven't sorted out a schedule, but I hope to come out with Chapter 2 tomorrow or the next day. Anyway, I hope you guys liked it.